Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the vice chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum, and we are headed down Experimental Road, Greg. Experimental Road. My Azoic assistant. Did I get that? Close enough? Okay. First of all, though, Greg, we're going to be talking about an airplane today that is quite exotic, but I'm really not sure that turning me into Princess Leia made the best thing here, but they are quite fetching, I might say. But thank you, Greg. I'm going to go ahead and get these off there, and we're going to toss them off camera. Another good catch by the Kenny. So today we are continuing down Experimental Aircraft Road. We're going to be talking about probably one of the most exotic interceptors that was ever proposed, Greg, ever proposed. The XF, the 103, made by Republic, the Thunderwarrior. Now, I am standing in front of a Thunder Chief, also made by the same manufacturer, but not to be confused. The Thunderwarrior was a beast. It was designed by Alexander Kartveli and William O'Donnell. Now, Kartveli, you may remember him. He was involved in the design of the P-47. He was involved in the design of the F-84, and he was involved in the design of this Humma-Jumma. By the way, that's a technical term, big Humma-Jumma, the F-105, which at one time was the largest single-seat fighter in the United States Air Force inventory. It was just it's a beast. It is a nuclear strike bomber, and it did get a few air-to-air kills in Vietnam. It was completely misemployed in the Vietnam War as more of a strike bomber, and consequently suffered very, very high losses. Now, what we're talking about here is an aircraft that was proposed. It was built to the mock-up stage, to the prototype stage, and it was never completed. It was actually discontinued in 1957, if you can believe that. Now, the idea behind the Thunderwarrior, I'm going to pick up my F-105 because that's as close as we're going to get. You can see that kind of delta shape, right? We were getting the delta wing. The Thunderwarrior was a pure delta shape. Now, the interesting thing about the Thunder Chief and the Thunderwarrior, the Thunderwarrior was designed at a time that they hadn't figured out the area rule. So the Thunderwarrior is a straight fuselage. There's no Coke bottle, no flaring down there to deal with the sound wave from going into the speed of sound, the shock. The Thunderwarrior did not have that. It operated at a service ceiling, get this, Greg, 80,000 feet. So its service ceiling was 80,000 feet. The hull on this aircraft was going to be, and this you should start to understand why it was never built. The hull on this aircraft was entirely or almost entirely made of titanium. The entire aircraft was made of titanium. The cockpit on the airplane was essentially a capsule. So the pilot, and you can really see it on this airplane, we talked about the Century Series fighters going faster and faster, and the pilot's getting buried more and more down in the airplane to deal with the aerodynamics. The Thunderwarrior was such that the pilot was actually in a capsule, and the capsule would come off the airplane. Now, Fred, fun fact, what was another airplane that had a capsule on it? Think about it, Greg. The B-1A. The B-1 bomber had a capsule, and that was one of the things that went through redesign, that they went to a individual ejection, but it had a capsule ejection system as well initially. The idea about that was obviously if you're ejecting at 80,000 feet, you want to be somewhat protected. Now, the aircraft, another thing it did not have, no guns. Remember, and this was the downfall when we got into Vietnam. This is in the 50s. We haven't been fighting any of that air-to-air stuff yet, but they were really to the point where they were almost entirely reliant, these designers, on missiles. This airplane, entirely so, up to 2 nuclear-tipped missiles. This aircraft, this Thunderwarrior, was completely designed to go after Soviet bombers. It was high altitude. Now, why was it so unique? Its propulsion system, Greg. The thing that was cool about this airplane, and this is really, if you're a engineering airplane geek, Greg, come on, you got to get excited about this. Greg's pricked up there. This aircraft, the proposed Thunderwarrior, had two different types of propulsion. It had a Wright J67 engine that was an air breather that was for low altitude, right? And then when it got up to altitude, and this is where Greg can throw a graphic up on this, it had a ramjet. And the idea behind the ramjet is that it forces air. It's almost a hollow tube, and Greg can throw up a graphic, and it pushes it in there, and then it creates the combustion. Now, Greg, what's the interesting thing about a ramjet? Stationary, it produces no thrust. Zero go-go out of the back of the airplane. So they needed two engines to make this work, if you think about that. And when Greg throws up the graphic, you can kind of see the design and then the cells. But that ramjet is what made it unique. Now, the other thing was the speed. And we talked about, hypersonic missiles, and now we're kind of going back to stuff that we worked on in the 50s, even like the X-15 with these new hypersonic weapons. Well, this aircraft was the most efficient above Mach 3. It was a Mach 3 airplane. Now, it was a pure delta wing, a complete delta wing with the control surfaces would pitch, but it wasn't a maneuverable airplane at all. And what would end up happening was the pilot would get it up to about 60,000, 65,000 feet, then he would get ready to shut that J67 down, and then he would engage the ramjet, and off he would go. Then he would have to close the baffles again, the baffle system in the airplane, and restart. Extremely complex. What was another bad thing about that, Greg? What's another bad thing? Fuel. No go-go out the back with no go-go juice. And so the thing turned out to be, when they were looking at it, turned out to be just an absolute fuel hog. It sucked gasoline. So not only did it have a very complex propulsion system, but it wasn't too spendy on the fuel. So it was also built around a used pulse Doppler radar. And as I said, a whole different type of missile set, similar to what we've seen in the F-102, where you have those doors pop open and the missiles come out. That was the key to this airplane. Now, my salute today is to this designer, to Alexander Kartveli, because I'm going to tell you something else that he worked on that was amazing. But if you want to talk about a guy that was completely involved in building aircraft and influential on all kinds of different aircraft designs, going back to, and I know I always screw up this name, but Seversky, the P series of airplanes. Then he ended up with Republic when he ended up with the P-47. This guy had an incredible impact on American fighter design. Now, the other cool thing that he had about American aircraft is he worked on something unique, Greg. He worked on the space shuttle, but it wasn't called the space shuttle at that time. It was just a orbital glide airplane. But think about this. They were working on that design in the middle 1950s. And that airplane, which you want to call it, airplane, space plane, whatever you want to call it, didn't really come into fruition until the late 1970s. So today, not only did Greg turn me into Princess Leia, that's part of the deal, the hat's part of the deal, now we have the Cola champagne. Greg, you stepped it up, a Goya product. 140 calories. None of the pure cane sugar stuff or anything here, but something to toast Alexander with. Champagne, which he rightfully deserves, I might add. Wouldn't you agree? Oh, there's a fizz. I heard that. That's nice. And it's actually a little cold, pleasant aroma. Greg, this may not be the gruel you normally give me. We'll see. refresco, Greg. This is actually not bad. Yeah, Greg he's upset, but second sip. That's pretty good, Greg. I like that. I'm going to keep this one. We're going to go through the whole thing with it. So I don't get to do this very often. This is like 1 in 100 that actually drink the whole thing. So Republic did see a lot of these really fast interceptors get into production. The reality of these aircraft were when they ran into Russian missiles, which in the 50s, they just hadn't contemplated how dangerous surface-to-air missiles would become up into Vietnam. And what ended up happening was this aircraft was no longer being used as a nuclear bomber. And with that, it had a bomb bay in the center. It had weapon stores hanging off outside of it. You can see pictures of these things with bombs hanging all over the place. What does it do? It slows the airplane down. It loses its aerodynamic capabilities. And they were just sitting ducks for missiles. So much so that caused a complete rethink in the doctrine of these a missile with a man in it, which is the best description I can get of these aircraft. They were all the same way. So although the XF-103 was never built, I would argue that if it had been built, the only thing that it had going for it was speed. It was up high, it was very fast, but what was another airplane that they were already working on? The Skunk Works, which was, ultimately came up with the SR-71. This aircraft was not the SR-71. The propulsion system and the way that it worked was just too complicated, and with the fuel consumption, it would have been a hot mess if it had ever made it to production. So we're lucky that never happened. Now, Greg, there was a companion, and it was, as I said, canceled in 1957, and it kind of moved off into history. It's too bad, though, Greg, that the mock-up didn't survive. It would be cool. I never really thought about saving all that stuff, but I don't think the mock-up survived. You might be able to find it, but I think it's gone. The other aircraft in the family of aircraft that this was involved in was the North American, the XF-108, which were, again, these super high altitude, super fast airplanes. As I said, we're probably lucky that they've never been built. And doctrine changed. We went the total opposite direction with the F-15, the F-16, the F-18, the F-22, highly maneuverable thrust vectoring aircraft, and I don't think we'll ever see that. Now, an exciting thing today, along the lines of these super fast airplanes, Lockheed Martin, we just did it on the Dagger, the Russian Dagger missile. The United States today said that they actually tested a Lockheed Martin hypersonic device that actually came out today as I was preparing prep for this video. So perhaps we're going to go into high altitude, super fast airplanes again until somebody comes up with another countermeasure, and then we'll go off in another direction. Now, if you want to channel Alexander here, this designer, Kartveli, you can go out to our website. This is really nice. I like this, Greg. This is something I'd hang on my wall, and my wife would take down 15 minutes after I hung it. But this is a Republic P-47D Thunderbolt. This is a wartime aircraft, heavy fighter, probably one of the best fighters of World War II, and certainly one of Alexander's best works. You can go out to the site, click on the link, and Jason will gladly send that to you. Now, we cannot do this. Today we're in the Miles hangar with all of our jets. We cannot make this happen without your donations. Click on that donation link. Send us a few bucks to help us do what we do. We can certainly appreciate that. Now, if you came across us on YouTube, all we do are airplanes. That's all we talk about is military aircraft. Maybe subscribe to our channel. We would certainly, Greg would be very happy with that. Greg would be excited. He said that. I would be very happy if you did that. Subscribe to our channel. Refer us to a friend that likes military aviation. If you catch us on Facebook, give us a like. We can take your comments at any time. Give us comments. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day.